So, Andy, you've lived in Evansville all of your life. So, we were curious to hear from your perspective, how has Evansville evolved? And then what are kind of the things that you think from an ADA perspective, what are kind of those top priorities that you think we could improve on?
Well, definitely Evansville's evolved. I mean, you look at what Robert Stadium, provided for the community as far as entertainment and that kind of thing, and then they bring in the Ford Center, and that's just revolutionized things as far as, of course, parking's still kind of an issue down around the Ford Center, but as far as accessibility and having a decent seat at a concert, I mean, I've been to several shows at the Ford Center, and it's just incredible. But there's definitely things and parts of the city that could, definitely use some work.
Yeah. What would you, I know there are probably a lot of things that we could do, but what would be like your top thing that you think that leaders should prioritize?
What I found out recently is a lot of the building codes in Evansville really need to be updated because they're still using building codes from 2009 that aren't in parallel with ADA code. So some businesses are getting away with building, buildings and being able to conduct business and not necessarily being ADA compliant, to where people in wheelchairs or people with disabilities or just older people with mobility issues can get into their business to enjoy the services like everybody else can.
Yeah.
So.
Tell us a little bit about how you grew up. You mentioned in another article that I saw about your mom and the experience that she created for you as a kid growing up. And
right. Well, technically, I grew up in Spencer County, Indiana, which is about 30 minutes southeast of here, in a little town called Richland City. It's got 500 people in it. We're talking one bank. We're talking no stoplights. Heck, we just got paved streets like 9 years ago, and we thought we were really high tech then. And actually, they're just now burying fiber to have high-speed internet down there. So that's where technically I grew up at. My graduating class at South Spencer High School had 98 people in the class. As far as I know, I was the only disabled student or student that had any kind of special needs in the whole school system when I started out. And I was actually mainstreamed into public school in the first grade and back in the 80s, and that wasn't really something you heard about back then. So Mom was one of those that really fought for my rights and really spoke up for me and made sure that I had the same opportunities as everybody else, because I never they would pull me out occasionally for OT and PT therapy and that kind of thing, but I never really got pulled out of class and got segregated into a special needs classroom and said, this is what you have to do. They'd come in and give me IQ tests every 2-3 years, thinking that was going to change so they could segregate me. But I kept looking at the guy going, these are the same questions as last year. Why are we doing this? Right. And he goes, how do you know those are the same questions? I said, well, I'm not an idiot. Right. They're wasting your time. They're wasting my time. Just let me go back to class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think that shaped kind of your perspective on the life in front of you as a child, instead of being pulled out separately,
Well, I kind of felt that, just like everybody else, because, I was in class just like everybody else. I had a designated student that I would pick out from every class, because you had different periods in high school. You had 8 periods when I was in school. And so I'd pick a student that was going to the same class I was, the next period, and they would help me carry my book bags to the next class and that kind of thing. So I really had friends that were able to support me, and, I showed up at every home football game and that kind of thing. I had a little bit of bullying in school, but pretty much the football team took care of that if I had any problems.
Right. So it didn't take us long in talking to you to realize that you have a really fantastic sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
So just want to hear more about your comedy and how you used humor to connect with people, or just kind of disarm people and in your everyday life.
It was kind of one of those things I used in school a lot, because that's how I made friends, was like, if I can make this person laugh, they're not going to feel as uncomfortable about my situation And I'm going to joke about something that maybe we both have in common to kind of break down that barrier, to let them know that, hey, it's okay to laugh about this.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the joke I always use is, I told my mom I wanted to do stand-up comedy, so she told me to break a leg.
Oh,
Yeah, so I broke them both because mom's always right.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so sometimes that throws some people for a loop. They're not sure, oh my God, should I laugh at that? Should I not laugh at that? It's okay to laugh at that stuff. We need to talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
It's stuff that needs to be talked about. I mean, I really like the show on ABC right now, Speechless, if you've ever seen that. It's a sitcom that centers around a child with special needs, and it really talks about the issues in the disability community that need to be talked about, you know? Like the fact that down at the Coliseum, did you know the only access at the old Coliseum downtown is around the back of the building, back by the trash can?
No.
That's the only way to get in that building.
I
And I found out about this after my friend carried me up all those stairs out in front of the Coliseum, because they didn't have it clearly marked that the handicap accessible entrance was at the rear of the building.
Yeah.
And some businesses don't realize how much of a help that is if they just put a sign up that let us know where the accessible entrance is.
Yeah, pretty simple fix, it seems.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't think about that because maybe they're not in that situation, or if you have a loved one that has a mobility issue, you know, maybe you think about that more often, or you know, maybe you broke your leg at one point and you have to be in that situation, so you think about it a little bit differently.
Yeah, absolutely. So from your perspective, like, what do you think the biggest misconception is, or the thing that people don't understand about just everyday life?
That a lot of us require around-the-clock care. It's not necessarily my case. I moved to Evansville in 2006, mostly for the high-speed internet. No, I'm kidding. Mostly just to be closer to the rehab center here in Evansville, and you know, and my doctors and that kind of stuff. Just for convenience sake, and the fact that I work here in town as well. And you know, I was able to live on my own independently, dress myself, shower myself, get to my job, you know, drive my own car. I mean, I do things just like everybody else does. I just do them a little differently.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've went through renting an apartment. I've owned my own house at one point. I've done all the things that you probably shouldn't do. You know, I've filed for bankruptcy. I've been through a failed marriage. I've done things just like anybody that would be able-bodied would have to go through. And just because I have a disability, sure, it makes it a little challenging at times, but it doesn't make it completely impossible.
Right. So we're here at Easter Seals. How has, and waiting in the lobby earlier, talking to you and everyone that came in, I mean, you knew it felt like you were at a family reunion almost.
Yeah.
So what role has Easter Seals played in your
Well,
life?
I've been coming to Easter Seals, I'm going to show my age here. I've been coming here for the last 38 years. I've been coming here ever since I was 18 months old. The therapist that I saw whenever I first came here as a baby, Patty Ballbach, she is still employed at Easter Seals. She is still a therapist here because the people that are employed here, they think of it more as a lifelong career than they do a job. And they really care about what they do here. And you make you make lifelong friendships here, you know, like with Pam Kirk that you met. I mean, these are just people that want to help you succeed. They've taught me how to tie my shoes. They taught me how to get dressed. They taught me how to cook hamburger helper. Sure, it's not the tastiest thing in the world, but I know how to cook it, you know.
In a pinch.
Yeah. If I really get down to it and I really got to impress a lady, I can cook some hamburger helper,
There you
know.
go. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, they just teach you everyday life skills that most people take for granted.
Right.
So, it's just a great place, and I still receive services, you know, today from Easter Seals. Anytime I have a kink or I think a muscle's out of whack, and you know, just like taking your car in for a tune-up, if I think my body needs a tune-up, this is the first place I call because, you know, we've got a history together.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Yeah. Earlier we were also speaking about with the ADA compliance and all of that. What are some of the things that you think people don't know about ADA compliance that you would like for them to know?
A lot of people think that if people aren't ADA compliant, they're going to go to jail, or that all people in wheelchairs are out to get them because they're not ADA compliant. No, we just want to be on the same level playing field as everybody else. You have to think, if there's one stair to get into a building and you're using a wheelchair, guess what? That's a game changer. Guess what? I can't get into that building because it's got a step. What a lot of other people don't realize is when you go to the bathroom, I know the handicap stalls are real comfortable. I know you can stretch out in them. I know the bars are real comfortable if you had too much Taco Bell or whatever, but reserve those for people that really need those. If I really got to go and some kid's farting around in the accessible stall and I can't use it because some kid thinks it's fun to play around in there, guess what? I may have to go home and change my pants because this kid, his parents didn't teach him that it's not cool to go in and use the handicap stall when there's a perfectly good stall next to it that they could have used.
Right.
So,
yeah.
It's just simple things like that. Or if you're able to use the stairs, use the stairs. Don't use the elevator. Don't be lazy. Everybody's got their little pedometers now, their little stair counters. I'm sure it's going to help you hit your Fitbit goal or whatever if you just take the stairs. Yeah. It makes me nervous in some situations because it's like everybody's rushing toward the elevator, but I actually need to use the elevator when some people are just using it because out of convenience. You know what I mean? Same thing with the handicap spot. Just because you stole grandma's placard and you think it's cool to park there, don't park there. Don't park in the blue lines that are next to the handicap spot. I had that happen a couple weeks ago. A guy pulled his motorcycle into that spot because he thought it was convenient to park his bike there. That is a loading area that is used for a wheelchair lift if someone has a van that needs to use that.
Yeah.
And I will call the police every single time and make sure they get ticketed for that until they learn that is not a parking spot.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Just little stuff like that. Just little stuff that you may not realize because you don't deal with it on a daily basis. And I do.
Yeah. So with the E is for Everyone initiative, what's your perspective on what's happened so far, and what advice would you give to us in the future?
The E is for Everyone campaign is really awesome. I really think of it as equal opportunity more than everyone, because as far as I'm concerned, everybody's equal. Yeah. We're all trying to achieve the same goal. We all want the American dream. We all want to own a house someday. We all want to, we all want to have a family someday. We all are trying to achieve the same goal. It's just everybody has a different way of getting to that goal. So that means if businesses can be more aware of that to allow us to get in to spend money at their places, to allow us to get into the bar and have a drink if we had a rough day, most places of worship are completely accessible. If we're having a real tough day and we're really looking for answers, most of those places are accessible, which is awesome. Evansville is just one of those towns to where it seems like everybody knows everybody, and that's an okay thing because we're the third largest city in Indiana, and you would think that it's more distant than what it is. But when the community really comes together and decides that a group really needs help, like for instance at the telethon this year, we raised over $1 million for people with disabilities here in the tri-state for kids and adults with disabilities. Yeah. Over $1 million.
That's amazing.
Yeah, just little Evansville. If we can get behind something like that and do something like that, then what else is the city capable of?
Right.
So.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share that we haven't covered?
It's just nice to live in a city to where if I need the help, it's readily available for me to get it, and I don't have to really go through several doors and make umpteen phone calls to get something done if I really want it to happen. So, I just hope that I leave a legacy behind to where other people with disabilities don't have the difficulties that I've had to go through.